What's going on, creators? I just want to get on here and share some tips and techniques to get out of the option overload problem that a lot of producers can find themselves in. I know I found myself in that problem where it's just like, oh, I got 5,000 samples to go through in a new sample library, or oh, I got some new VSTs that have 300 presets in them, or there's a new plugin that has 100 different types of bass sounds. Whatever the problem is when it comes to option overload, it's important to kind of recognize it for what it is and to start to make some moves to get out of those blocks so that you can stay productive in producing music, so you don't have unnecessary resistance when it comes to producing, and so you can actually manifest. Oh, Mike said a trigger word, which is basically, what I mean is, bringing an inner vision into reality. So if you have an inner vision for like a composition, something you want to produce, some music, a genre, whatever it is, it's about getting better and better at bringing that vision into reality. So whatever language you want to use to describe that, whether that's manifesting or just creating, whatever floats your boat. But like when it comes to option overload, it's important to recognize when you're kind of found yourself in that dilemma. Well, Mike, I have so many awesome samples, I don't want to get rid of any. And it's like, well, it's kind of either set a time on a weekend to really go through your database or whatever sample library you have on your computer and really start to let go of the shit that's not serving you anymore. Whether that's, oh, Mike, I have 500 harmonicas loops to, I might use those eventually. Well, Mike, you're not a real producer unless you create all of your own sound. It's like, okay, those are the problems. Those are the blocks that are keeping you stuck in a writer's block situation. So you either get rid of the shit, stop hoarding onto it, or start to limit yourself when it comes to your producing until you're able to incorporate more of those samples. And so it's like, okay, well, Mike, I got 500 I don't know, Scottish bagpipe samples, from a free sample library. It's like, they have some really good loops in G major. Are you saying just to get rid of them? I'm saying, well, let's start using them or losing them. So step one in getting out of this option overload is either, start using the samples that you've had sitting on your computer for 3 years, or put it on an external drive that you can get it out of your workspace, so you're not tempted to like, oh, I have a production, I have a drum beat, I have some bass. Now I'm going to spend 3 days just dragging samples in that key over and changing the tempo, see if it works. Let's just see if it works. Instead of having an inner vision that you're trying to shape, it's more about let's just do the hodgepodge. I have all of this shit. I might as well use it kind of mentality. And with that comes a lot of unnecessary busy work, I guess it could be. It's like you're not really, it's like having this idea like, oh, there could be this diamond in the rough. That I feel like that's an illusion. But like as far as being more productive, start to limit yourself on either your samples or the instruments that you're going to produce in, to help break out of some of that option overload resistance. And what I mean by that is like, okay, well, say that you're into creating rock music, for example. It's pretty easy to realize the instruments involved. You got a drum, you got bass, you got guitars, maybe some keyboard, maybe some and in keyboard, you could maybe put a Rhodes, a organ, a synthesizer to replace that. But some of the problems that can kind of creep in, especially if you're trying to be innovative, is like trying to create sounds that no one's ever heard before, or like genre that no one's ever been like familiar with. It's like, oh, I really want to be different. I want to be unique. I want to do something out of the box and special. It's like, okay, well, just doing really good music producing is that. It's like you can do something really special with a guitar, a bass, a drum, just those 3 instruments. You can do something really special with that if you just really focus on creating something good versus something super creative that no one's ever heard of before. It's like it's easy to get out in the weeds sometimes when you're producing. And you see that with like in different like specialties. I watch a lot of cooking shows and stuff. that's just something I'm into for whatever reason. And you'll see that with like chefs that are trying to really be creative and impress the judges by doing something out of the box and extremely weird and like, well, it's like a gamble whether it's going to even work or not. And it's like, you can do a lot with just really learning how to cook a steak really well, how to season a steak really well. Instead of like, oh, I'm going to just try to fillet some ground cockroaches in a butter sauce. It's like getting out in the weeds a little bit. It's like, yeah, you could do something like that. I'm not telling you what to do. It's like I think everybody's unique and what they create's unique, but if it's causing problems and you're producing, that's another thing where it's like too many options, too much out of the box. I'm not going to say out of the box, but just trying to create something that's never been done before can leave you spinning a lot of time just in demo mode. Oh, I'm going to just move shit over here, not finishing what you're starting because you're just trying to create a new thing so fervently that you're not even creating anything. And so catching those patterns, and that's something you need to do in your own self. But when it comes to limiting yourself to maybe a tried and true arrangement of instruments, for example, well, that doesn't mean that you have to then just do something in C, G, A minor, F chord progression like a lot of just common music is producing at 120 beats per minute. And even with that as a starting block, you can be ultra creative in just that. It's all about taking those first steps, start creating, start doing, and a lot of times the creative juices will start flowing, ideas will start coming to you, and things will start to evolve as you're just making the effort to like, okay, well, I'm limiting myself to only these 4 options. So that's tip number 1: limit yourself. Number 2 is, dedicate yourself to maybe one synthesizer. Oh, Mike, there's so many options. What do I do? Do I get the most expensive one? It's like, that's a discovery process. Me personally, I'll download free samples a lot of times. I'll just upgrade the FL version studio, like the FL Studio version that I have on my operating system, because the nice thing with FL Studio is you get these free updates for life. So once you commit to it, I mean, I don't know how many versions I've gone through now, maybe 5, and each time the quality of the samples, I have like the producer bundle, I think. It's like one of the top ones or whatever. So a lot of the stuff is unlocked, and so when you have these new VSTs that are added to the bundle, it's, for me, I like to dedicate a lot of time fucking with them, and it's like, okay, once I really find a synthesizer that I'm like can easily start to tweak, and that's where presets are handy, where you're able to just rapidly go through what the options are. But then you can start to dial it in a little bit more custom. Like, oh, I'm going to turn the preamp up a little bit to give it a little bit more of a solid sound, more volume. I'd say volume, but more amplitude, more. I like the way I can adjust the types of frequencies. Oh, I like how I have these envelopes that I can really tighten the sound if I like it. And then really start to learn the synthesizer itself, so that you can start to either customize presets or be able to take an inner vision. Maybe you want like a clicky poppy sound or something, and I can use this sine wave in this synthesizer to create that, and I can mold it and shape it easily using this program. Well, then it becomes easier then to like dedicate you're producing with that instrument. So it's like you have a vision, how to create it using a certain synth or VST or whatever. Well, it makes it a little bit less option overload. And for example, bass, it's that has been one of the instruments for me to get a good low end, has been more of a challenge than I thought it would be. You would think it's just like, a simple sine wave, and you could just drop it down. But there's a lot of like frequencies competing in that low end. There's a lot of muddiness that can develop, and a lot of bass sounds can like sound distorted and fucking just like that doesn't sound good. Or, it sounds weird when you're just demoing it by itself, but then in a mix, it's like, oh, that sounds really punchy and on point and like, solid. And so one of the next things to do is really find VSTs that you can really customize and get familiar with, so you're not depending on, the next sample library, the next preset factory bank that's an option, because all of these options start to just, and not to say it always does, but for me, a lot of times it gets me spinning out in the weeds and like, well, let me just go through these presets. Let me hear this preset, and just hearing the shit on a loop all day, just doop, 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 nope, doop, nope, doop. It's not the most productive use of time. It's disheartening on some level, because then you almost start to like create a bunch of like mental resistances and blocks and writer's blocks when it comes to like, I'm just trying to find this ideal sound, versus taking what you have and being able to sculpt it and mold it into what you want. The more that you produce, the more that you're able to hear those dry sounds and see the potential that exists. And that's something that comes with experience, but it's something that can start to get out of the option overload, blocking, resistances and stuff that hamper creativity. And, then you're able to quickly diagnose the problem, quickly be able to solve it using your own kind of that limited options. That by limited, I mean having the best option, but not having 50 best options. So when it comes to like bass, for example, it's like once you find like maybe a VST that's like you're really able to either have a lot of solid presets that you can go through and like see if it works with your mix, or then having the ability to then modify or just create from scratch, these dry sounds, incorporate in your mix, and then through the producing, through like EQing, compression, and some of these other types of things, how you're panning it, whatever, you're able to mold it and shape it to more solid on point sound. There you go. You're getting out of that option overload dilemma. Another option, is that to create something in a genre maybe that you're not familiar with. Oh, Mike, how is that helpful? And it's like, well, again, part of like getting the creative flow going is in not having these mental resistances, but getting more into flow states. And so a lot of times if you're really stuck on like, well, I have this inner vision and I don't have the tools to bring that to reality, a lot of times it's easier to start maybe doing a tutorial in a genre that maybe you're not familiar with, to start getting more experience in just fucking with things, fucking with sounds, getting things to a level where you're not necessarily in creator mode. You're more in, I'm going to work on my mixing skills mode. I'm going to work on just arrangement skills. All those things can be developed that help you break out of the option overload, where it's like, well, what style do I need to make? What do I need to make? A trap song? Do I need to make a southern crunk beat? Or it's like, or do I like focus on doing like something cinematic? Do I focus on something that is going to be useful in publishing situations and licensing situations? Am I going to focus on, it's like really just narrowing down your focus really helps to drop a lot of the woulda, coulda, shouldas. What if I do this? What if that? Well, maybe this is the song that's going to put me on the map. Maybe this is the song that I'm going to be like, that I'm going to make it with this one. It's like all of those dramas can really start to spin you in the weeds and get you out of what you're trying to produce music for anyway, which in a lot of ways is to add something of value to the world, bring some heaven to people that are just done with the drag and bullshit of the world for a while, that just need to unplug from that, just need to relax and clear their minds and reset their body. It just is more beneficial to really start to incorporate some of these things, especially if you're having these option overload blocks. That's the biggest thing. It's like, well, Mike, I don't have these blocks. I like to go through all. Then this is not for you. This is for people that are having problems. Going from, okay, I got all this shit. Mike, what about the 5,000 starts of songs that I got going? Again, option overload. Let them go. It's like Maybe you'll go back to them again someday in the future, But now we just need to start getting the process going again without the dramas and the resistance. And a lot of times it's important to be mindful of the things that you're telling yourself as you're producing, whether it's like option overload, fears of judgment that from like people, like whatever the blocks are, is important to start to be mindful of the things you're telling yourself, because that's a big red flag on what the block is that you need to overcome to take your music producing to the next level. And so, with that being said, hopefully these tips have been helpful. Hopefully you can start to apply some of these things, especially if you're dealing with like some blocks and resistance, to help you get more in the swing of producing again, if that's something that has become now a big mountain to climb. Hopefully that helps to alleviate some of that drama and get you into more of a producing mindset, less of a block mindset. Let that shit go. Just I challenge you in the next 3 days to do something new on a limited in a limited way. So limit yourself to, I'm going to use these instruments and that's it. I'm going to do a 3-piece band. Oh, Mike, I like to do dance music and electronic music. It's like, do a 3-piece band. Kick, percussion, bass, and a lead instrument. What can you do? Challenge yourself like that, and by the doing, you'll start to work through a lot of those blocks. And so with that being said, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. If you have any questions, comments, would like some more topics discussed, drop what you're thinking in the comments. I'll be happy to address them in whatever way I can. Hopefully that helps strengthen the producer community, which in a lot of ways the producer community that I've experienced is fucking toxic as shit. And so really want to try to help get a lot of that toxicity out of people's creative flows. I think that's important. But then drop your comments, drop your takes in the comments. Happy to deep dive some of them things. I also appreciate your spiritual support, your financial support, all these kinds of things. I appreciate your being here. I appreciate your attention. It wouldn't be possible without your support. I appreciate it. And with that being said, I'm going to bounce. So have a good rest of your day, and God bless.